This is Driving Solutions, exclusively on CPTnews.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Shyann Malone.
And I'm Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining us today.
So far, the ongoing United Auto Workers Union strike against the Detroit Big Three shows no signs of any type of resolution.
Today on Driving Solutions, we're learning how this strike could impact sales and inventory and what dealers can do to get ahead of it. Joining us now is Chief Strategy Officer at Lotlinx, Mr. Tom Gage. Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Good to see everybody today.
Sure.
Tom, welcome. Talk to us about the loss of production during this strike. How many days will it generally take to really bounce back?
Well, it's kind of curious, actually. I was looking through the news this morning, and you start to see actually all these different viewpoints, and some of them say, dark storms coming and everything else. And in fact, actually, Mark Stewart, who's the chief operating officer over at Stellantis, he believes that today's supply and there's plenty of vehicles on dealers' lots. And, that's actually probably a true statement when you actually look at the companies that are being impacted by the strike, what their overall supply looks like in the marketplace. But curiously, the UAW took a very strategic and different approach actually to attacking the problem right here. And in fact, what they did was targeted actually those plants that actually have some what one would perceive is the most desirable vehicles on dealer lots. And so those vehicles actually tend to have actually a lower day supply than other vehicles produced by those manufacturers. So, those are the bread and butter ones that dealers have. They're good high margin ones. They're high in demand. And so day supply of those vehicles tends to be a little lower. Now, is it an immediate problem and should people be worrying about it at the moment from a dealership perspective? I don't think so, unless for certain situations we'll talk about later.
Yeah, for sure. What brands or models might be first impacted?
The UAW took a very targeted approach to doing this strike, right? And if you looked actually at the models that they're and the production lines that they're closing down at the moment, there actually tend to be probably the most popular vehicles that the three manufacturers are producing, and that includes the Broncos, some of the Chevrolet mid-size pickup trucks, and oddly enough, some GMC vans. But as the strike progresses and a resolution doesn't happen, we would expect actually the UAW also to step into the next most popular set of vehicles, which would be clearly the Ford F-150 and the Chevrolet Silverado. So in the short term, actually, those specific models are the most desirable and actually have the lowest day supply in North America. The F-150 and Silverado have a little bit more buffer, so there's going to be a little bit time before actually those impacts are felt in the industry. But clearly, the UAW has been very strategic in focusing on maximum pain for the manufacturer, as well as a potentially earliest impact to dealers.
So with that being said, Tom, do you anticipate a lot of brand switching?
Curiously, no. And if you can actually look at my backdrop right here, that it's a chart produced by Cox Automotive. Lotlinx also produces the same type of data sets, but more popular is the Cox Automotive version. And it talks about actually day supply per manufacturer. And on one side, we see Toyota and Kia and Hyundai, very low day supply. And then on the other side, we see the brands that are impacted by potentially the UAW strike. And they have actually a lot more buffer in the system before they get to what the industry would call a 60-day supply of vehicles. So the reality is that consumers really can't go, if there was limited supply with UAW vehicles, they really can't do much brand switching over to other manufacturers because the inventory just isn't there. And so one would actually more expect the consumer to take other paths, or dealers be a little bit more creative in the vehicles that they're actually positioning for consumers.
Sure, very interesting. That's an interesting point that I didn't consider before. Are there different?
I don't think actually very many people are
Yeah.
looking like that. They're talking about that the UAW strike is going to cause a lot of defections and everything else. And from what I'm seeing, actually probably the only major opportunity for defection right there is to switch consumers over to electric vehicles,
Yeah.
which actually have a very high day supply at the moment.
Are there different parts of the country that maybe feel the impact first on this?
When I'm looking at the data and actually the trickle of inventory for these impacted models coming into dealerships, the one that actually starts to become very glaring are dealerships that are located in rural markets. And part of that is actually that these dealerships generally only receive one or two very desirable vehicles per month to sell. And so it doesn't take them very much time actually to sell these vehicles. So if you dry that source up even for a short period of time, those are the dealers actually that are going to be most impacted. The volume dealers in large markets are likely going to continue and have a bit more buffer in the system before they sell out a vehicle. So if I was in the rural markets, that's probably a concern. And, it's one of the things we haven't really talked about right here too is that the affordability aspect of vehicles in general. So, the strike is just only one arm of actually what's happening in the economy right now, that the affordability of vehicles. So you take, these rural markets where, the income levels and the breadth of consumers that, you can tap into is not as far, then you might expect that some of these dealerships may struggle a little bit over the next bit.
Yeah, boy, that's for sure. Affordability.
But I'm not worried about major markets at all.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Just to go a little deeper on that, Tom, how will the strike impact pricing, do you foresee?
Oh, there's no doubt about it that any further supply chain challenges and everything else will have an immediate impact actually on the used car prices. Now, it's all dependent actually what consumers do. If they panic, there's a potential that they go ahead and start to try to buy, available new car vehicles, and that shortens up supply. But basically, if you don't have new car vehicles available, it creates this domino effect that dealers are not actually obtaining more vehicles for trade, and therefore, actually, they start to actually even greatly limit the used car supply, and there's nowhere else for used cars to go than actually up in price. So, I think the big worry that very few people are really talking about is the consumer sentiment and do they panic? So if news keeps on happening saying, hey, the UAW is having a major impact on the economy, it may shift consumer behavior right there.
Yeah.
Now, there's other two parts also that dealers may happen for dealerships. One is that for these popular vehicles, they may actually want to hold on to those vehicles and actually try to find consumers that maximize their profitability. And, that's also increasing price to some extent, either with add-ons or so forth. And the second thing that might happen, and it's one of the things we have started to observe, is some of these manufacturers, the number of vehicles and percent of vehicles that are over 60 or 120 days old has started to grow. And so we may actually see pricing pressure downward or in that class. The other observation we've seen, again, on the affordability side of it, is that vehicles that are priced in that $50,000 to $80,000 range are seeing softening in the marketplace. And, that may put pricing pressure. So it's not, again, all about the strike. It's a compounding effect, and you have to actually look at it from multiple angles.
Sure. We saw during COVID, the shortage of new vehicles, obviously because of the chips and what have you, and the supply chain issues. And now here we are with the strike. Obviously, how does the strike itself impact used cars specifically? You mentioned a few things there, But can you drill down a little bit more on how dealers can expect this to really affect and impact their used car department?
Well, if you don't have, say, the Bronco in stock and everything, there are a number of used Broncos in stock, and you want to be well positioned to actually have that type of inventory. But of course, you need the lead time of acquiring those vehicles. So the impact directly is that when a consumer comes in looking for a certain model and you don't have it anymore, because of the supply chain, availability because of strike, then you have to actually be talking to your sales reps and going through the game plan of what other type of vehicles can you put the consumer into that that they can afford. So the hard part, of course, is again going to be the affordability. The prices of those vehicles will be elevated, I would believe.
Sure.
Tom, are there things that dealers can do right now to try to get ahead of this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You need to actually be first actually understanding all these dimensions together. It's not, again, about just the strike. You actually have to look at the volume of vehicles in the marketplace. You have to actually look at the changes in consumer behavior that are happening because of the affordability side of it. And you have to have a game plan that you say, well, do I try to maximize profit on a certain vehicle and really not try to discount it for ones that are impacted by the strike?
Sure.
And so you have to have that game plan of the decisions you want to make and be talking to the sales teams and the desk manager on, how you want to operate on. Again, I'm less worried actually at the moment about, and I think dealerships that I talk to really are less worried about actually the strike impact. It's the other things that are going on in the marketplace that bring up some concern. In fact, I was talking to a Ford dealership in Texas that is also in a rural market, and that price point of pickup trucks in that $50,000 to $80,000 range, they've seen more or less since July a 50% reduction in sales. So is that actually because of affordability? I think it is, but and if there's other things going on, maybe so. But you need to actually look at your entire portfolio of inventory and have an exit plan for it.
Yeah, for sure. You want to take a shot at how long you think this will last?
Oh, it's not going to stop actually anytime soon. As I've mentioned, actually, Chevrolet and Jeep certainly built up a little bit of a supply in the marketplace ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that there's going to be any motivation to change or negotiate until actually we start to hit like the 25-day mark or longer.
Wow.
And so that's probably a little longer than what most people are talking about. They're saying that, well, 5 days is a long time, but the unknown factor is that the approach that the UAW is taking is very different than they've ever done before. First, hitting all three at the same time, but then also focusing on those model lines that are actually will have the most impact to dealerships as well as the manufacturers. So,
sure.
I think that's a big unknown, but I don't expect a quick resolution, but I'm not in that political game. So
yeah, and of course the union has bragged about the number. And of course the union's bragging that they've got like $850 million in their strike war chest, right, for their striking workers, and so that doesn't help matters at all either, right? Yeah,
and I don't think that they have the negotiating power to say, will consumers defect to other brands during that, because as data clearly shows, the supply is just not there in the likely manufacturers that a consumer might defect to. Consumers, if anything, are going to defect to used vehicles.
Yeah.
If this indeed, does prolong, Tom, I know you don't have a crystal ball per se, but how bad could it get? Is there a worst case scenario?
Oh, yeah, there always is. But I think it's probably going to be more of an economic one and everything. Hey, one of the things actually I've known and appreciated about dealerships is they do operate their businesses actually as small businesses. And they actually have several revenue streams coming into the dealership. So the savvy dealers are always going to actually figure out actually how they can make more money in the parts part of the business or the used car side of the business. So they will adjust. And will it be as nice, profitability as before? Well, maybe not, but they'll actually figure out a good path.
So it's just at a time that we saw prices starting to come down in showrooms because of COVID and the shortage of vehicles, and now there's a plethora of vehicles. You think we're going to quickly see vehicle?
I don't know
prices?
that there's a plethora. What's changed is our perspective of what plethora is.
Yeah.
Before COVID, actually, you would go on a lot and say, and then everybody would agree that there was a plethora of vehicles available. Today, actually, I think most dealers would say overall they have balanced inventory, because with the balanced inventory and shooting for a 60 days supply of vehicles on your lot, you really do have the opportunity to maximize front end gross on vehicles.
You think we'll start to see prices increase back up again the way we did see during
on the
COVID?
new car side? Well, first off, new car prices have been creeping up. They if you look at just the averages and so forth, they only show maybe $1,000 increase from last year. But on a model line perspective, it's generally a lot more significant than that.
Yeah.
So we're definitely already seeing the prices now. Where it hurts dealers, of course, is the incentives, and especially those vehicles that are over like 120 days old. Actually, do they get the incentives to actually move those vehicles, or and so forth? And I think we're going to start to see that diminish, just because of supply. The manufacturer doesn't have to offer that extra incentive to move those vehicles.
Right. Do you think we'll see this impact the third quarter in the terms of where we've been here in profitability over the course of the last?
The manufacturers, you bet.
Yeah.
But also note that these manufacturers also ramped up a little bit of supply coming into the strike. It wasn't like they were blind to this coming.
They heard the rumblings.
So there's a balance, there.
Sure.
And buffer, but you bet it actually. And I'm not an economist, so I can't talk really to that aspect of it.
Sure. Well, Tom Gage, Chief Strategy Officer at Lotlinx, thank you so much for your insights today. I know that our viewers and our dealer audience will get a lot out of your visit with us here today.
Thanks for watching Driving Solutions, exclusively on CPTnews.com.